It's that time of year again. It's the Locked On Ultimate Mock Draft. We're on the clock, folks. We got to figure out what we're doing with the number 6 overall pick. We'll do that on today's episode. Plus, we'll discuss this.
I don't know what your definition of a few.
It's
but
not two, but okay.
We'll see.
You are Locked On Hornets, your daily Charlotte Hornets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
In a minute, cuz we live.
It's Locked On Hornets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Thanks for making us your first listen. We're free and available anywhere you get your pods, and that includes YouTube. Today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA. Use code, all lowercase, LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. Doug is on the phone. He's working the GMs right now, trying to figure out what the Hornets are going to do at number 6. Not in the real NBA draft, folks. No, not the real one. The ultimate mock draft, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We were told by our fearless leader, maybe the assistant to the fearless leader, Nick Angstadt, the host of the Mavericks pod, that we were on the clock when we were conducting the third segment of the last episode. So we thought, yeah, babe, we're about to make this some content. Let's bring it to the people. We are the pod of the people. So we have a lot of options we're discussing. What are people saying on that phone line, Doug?
I mean, I'm talking to the Miami Heat right now. I'm talking to the Brooklyn Nets. People want this 6th round pick. I've got calls everywhere right now, and we are negotiating literally as we record this episode. But let me update everyone on the situation around this 6th pick, because we've got an actual mock draft occurring right now. And the Atlanta Hawks have taken Alex Sarr, number 1 overall. The Washington Wizards have taken Locked On Wizards have taken Donovan Clingan at number 2. The wrench has already been thrown. Houston did not trade the 3rd overall pick. They took the player that we talked about last episode that the Hornets would like to trade up for.
Yep.
They took Reed Shepherd, 3rd overall. Locked On Spurs. I mean, everyone's thinking Spurs want a guard, but the Spurs, Locked On Spurs, could not pass up the opportunity to take the falling star here. They get Zachary Risachet. And then Detroit does what everyone thinks Detroit is going to do, which is take Matas Buzelis. So that leaves the Hornets with a lot of options here. Stephon Castle, I think, would be an obvious pick. Dalton Knecht is still on the board. Devin Carter is still on the board. Ron Holland is still on the board. But a lot of people want this pick right now. I'm telling you that right
so
now.
here's what I say we do, because we really did just press record button with all these options without really breaking down or organizing how we were going to construct this show. Maybe we construct it as who the right player to pick is if we were to make this 6th overall selection.
I'm going to tell everyone, Locked On Nets, Locked On Heat, you're on hold right now. We are talking about who we are actually going to take here.
So we would talk about who we'd take. Next segment, we could go with some of the trade scenarios at hand. And then last segment, we could make the final decision and figure it out on what we're actually going to do in this ultimate mock draft.
Can I clarify one thing? So typically the network would be doing an ultimate mock draft show where we put all of these together in a big show. Not doing that this year, but you are basically getting the Hornets version right now.
You
That's
really
what
are.
we're providing you.
You really are.
It's exciting.
I'm not even kidding. This is real time. We got the text.
Everyone's waiting on us. We are Kevin from The Office. Everyone's looking at me.
The Minnesota Vikings had to forfeit their pick one time because they didn't make their selection on time. Luckily, that's not going to happen. Like, they're all waiting for us. We do not forfeit our selection. So we're going to try to figure it out. Okay, guys that we would realistically pick here. You mentioned Stephon Castle. You also have Dalton Knecht, somebody people are a fan of. Devin Carter, Providence, guard, defensive-minded guy, also on the board. Ron Holland. We used to like him, Doug. It was only 2 weeks.
A lot of people used to like him. Yeah. Something happened. There's been a little bit of reporting. Some guys from No Ceilings reported that there might be a little something happening behind the scenes there that's keeping Ron Holland's stock down.
Nikola Topic Like an interesting name to throw in here. I haven't talked a lot about him, but he had the ACL news. He's been injured, and so I think that's probably pushing him towards the bottom. He's falling. How much would he be in consideration? We weren't even really speaking about him as all that much of a realistic option. So maybe Topic is somebody that we should talk a little more about. Jacoby Walter has been picking up steam a little bit. Cody Williams also on the board. So if I haven't mentioned anybody else, feel free to correct me, but I think those are the guys that we would consider. I'll give my pitch for Stephon Castle. I ranked the guys, told you about Walker Mail's big board that you can't find anywhere but Locked On Hornets. So you're listening to exclusive big board material here, folks. Reed Shepherd is number 1. Stephon Castle's number 2. You and I have already gone over the strengths, the defensive toughness, point of attack, team defense. I think that the shooting form isn't completely broken. It's not fantastic, but I don't think it's a broken shot. Good cutter, secondary ball handling ability, maybe off of the bench running. I don't know about point, but enough there with his handles. Yeah, Stephon Castle would be my choice here if we were supposed to make the pick.
So if you've been listening along to our draft coverage, you know that Stephon Castle was written off of my big board. And I also said that because he didn't want to play here.
That's right.
Said he wanted to play point guard. He didn't want to play point guard for a team that already had a point guard. Mm-hmm. So he was off my big board. And I also said that once you're off my big board, you don't get back on my big board.
You did. You said that.
Well, that was until he decided to work out for Charlotte.
Yes, okay. Welcome back.
Then everything changes. All he had to do is come here and work out for Charlotte. So he's back on my big board, and I would say, with this scenario here, he's the best player available. I don't think there's any question about that. And yes, I think there are concerns about his shooting potential. I think some of those are overblown. Nada has been on here and told us that some of those are overblown. And he just at 6'6", he's going to immediately size up. I think you could play him at 3. Yeah, I think he can guard 2. He can guard 3. I think he sizes up the wing if he's willing to not be a primary ball handler, if he's willing to shift his role. And honestly, perfect scenario for him coming to a team with LaMelo Ball, who has not been, exactly a player that can stay on the floor. So he might get some opportunities to do that anyway. I think it would be a perfect fit for him, a perfect fit for the Hornets. He would absolutely be my pick here if we make the pick.
Just wanted to bring up just maybe rapid fire prospect questions for you. How close was it for you between Castle and Knecht?
Not close at all. Okay. Knecht is always for me a bit, and I've talked up Knecht on this show, but he's always been plan C for me. Yep. It's plan C if Shepherd and Castle are off the board. And I don't think I like Klingon, but I don't think the Hornets are going to take Klingon. So
and he's not here just for the mock draft.
He's
results,
gone 2 overall. Yeah. So there's a scenario where the Hornets are looking at Castle, Shepherd, and had Risa Shea continued to fall, and that very much could be a possibility, and the Spurs had taken Castle, then the Hornets would be looking at a situation where it would be like Knecht or Holland or whatever. So I really like Knecht, but he's always been a plan C for me.
Last one, Topic. I don't know. For me, Topic is really interesting because the dude lives in the paint and he gets there pretty easily, and that's enticing as hell. The shot's weird. It comes from in the middle of his chest, and he was only a 30% shooter, so the shot is real dicey. But he's really crafty finisher. That would complement LaMelo as far as an offensive player in the backcourt alongside Brandon. And it feels like the only reason he's falling is because of injury history, but that's still a concern. That's a legitimate enough reason for him to fall. I think there's enough to consider with Topic, and then eventually still just go ahead and settle with Stephon Castle.
Yeah, it's tough, right? Because I think it's less about the ACL tear, is that going to damage him long term, and more about the fact that a lot of teams didn't get to see him compete. Yeah. If this had been a college player, I think it would have been a lot different. I think, we'd still be, if this were Castle, had Castle torn his ACL or hurt himself in the tournament, I think we'd still be talking about Castle as a possibility at 6. With Topic, I think it's a lot different. Now, I think some team is going to take him at 10 to 13, and, He
Could be
could
sick.
be.
He could be
a
real
Luka
good.
Doncic
Yeah.
level player. You never know.
No,
but I think
yeah.
for the Hornets, I don't think they're going to take that risk. I think they would much rather have a player that could contribute in some way for this team next season. And Castle, I think for what the Hornets are, I think Castle can have the biggest impact immediately, even more so than Shepherd. I think Shepherd has the potential to develop into a player that is more impactful than Castle. But if you're just talking about next season, I think next season Castle has the potential to impact this team the greatest because of how good he can be defensively and because he sizes up a position that they need to size up.
Love me some Devin Carter. Not going to take him over Castle. Trade back option, I would heavily consider Devin Carter. But yeah, even though I love him, Castle's the guy if we're to make the pick. But if we don't, we'll talk about that. Coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
Don't go to sleep on the Hornets just yet.
Doug's not kidding when he said there were plenty of podcasts contacting us to see if they can move up to that 6th overall spot and select a certain prospect. Very interesting players on the board for us. We could trade for some pretty valuable guys with like $20 million a year contracts that are worth that contract. Stick around, find out who those players are coming up next. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. And Prize Picks is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Unlike other apps on Prize Picks, it's just you against the numbers. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections. Then you can watch the winnings roll on in, baby. Get in on the daily action with your friends and become part of the Prize Picks community today. And if you're looking for some promotions, Prize Picks has you covered every single week, from lowering select player stats projections on Tuesdays to help your lineup hit, or getting your entry fee back if you have a losing lineup on Fridays. Plenty of promotions that are happening every single week on Prize Picks. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use code LOCKEDONNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. That's code LOCKEDONNBA on Prize Picks for a deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. More Locked On Hornets ahead. Doug, I would call this the most exciting trade situation we've ever been, given the players that could be given up to us. Not only just because we have an enticing trade offer from one team, but multiple teams are willing to deal some recognizable names to us. So let's go over some of the scenarios here in front of us. You've been working the phones. You are the GM in this situation. What kind of trades do we have offered?
Listen, news is breaking all over the place right now in the fake NBA and the Locked On NBA Ultimate Mock Draft. It's also breaking in the actual NBA. I don't know if you've been paying attention to Twitter, Walker. As we record this show on a Thursday for Friday, we've got some actual trade news as Alex Caruso from the Chicago Bulls being traded, according to Woj, to the Oklahoma City Thunder for Giddey. So we've got a Caruso for Giddey trade. Things are getting started. If you don't think the Hornets could make something happen before the draft, I've got news for you, and that news is a Woj bomb has already happened. So the phone lines are flaring in the actual NBA. They are flaring in this fake NBA where I've texted Adam Armbrecht from the Locked On Nets podcast. Well, let me tell you about the other deal that we've already rejected, and that's the Locked On Heat podcast. When I said, anyone wants 6, they said, what do you think about Herro? And Walker said, no.
I'm out. No, I don't. Like, he's a good shooter. I would love shooting. I can't help but think about the defensive liability that he could be. Plus, he's going to be making $30 million in just a couple of seasons. It's on an ascending contract. I know with inflation that might actually be okay. That's still just too much money for somebody that when he got back from injury in the finals last year, Doug, they weren't exactly sure if they wanted to play him. Now, maybe that's too harsh on Tyler Herro.
And he was very quick, and I'll say Wes Goldberg was very quick to trade. You got to, you can't.
That's so true.
If you put anyone wants 6 and the first text comes out, you want Herro, that should be a red flag, a Heat red flag.
It's actually the best point. Like, forget all the numbers that I just threw out. Yeah, I'm not with it. Like, I don't think he's a great shooter, and that helps. That has a real spot on somebody's roster at $30 million. I'll put it this way. If you're making $30 million a year, I want to have a no doubt opinion that I am playing you as deep as we go into the postseason, like you're on the floor, and I'm just not doubting that. So for me, no thank you to a $30 million a year Tyler Herro.
Well, listen, when we've been talking about taking Devin Carter or taking Stephon Castle, one of my points is it would be nice if the Hornets, for once in their life, drafted a player with the potential to hang a Defensive Player of the Year award on their belt. There's no one on this roster right now. There's some players that can play defense, but there's no one on this roster right now that is even a remote threat of being a Defensive Player of the Year. And so how can you justify bringing a player in Tyler Herro to this roster that makes no sense for you defensively? So yeah. I totally agree with you. Now, the Nets, on the other hand, did not propose a player. They just want to get into this draft. They have no first-round picks, so this would not be a trade-back scenario.
Not a swap.
This would be a trade. Yeah. There's two options here, I think. There's a get the guy that you and I have talked about a lot that does have, I think, a chance at getting a Defensive Player of the Year award. Maybe not a great chance, but a chance. But is an amazing two-way player, a durable player, a potential all-star player, and that's Mikal Bridges.
Yep.
So that's a Hornets giving up multi first-round picks. And I'll tell you, Adam has already said, because first thing I texted Adam, I said, Mikal off the table. Because for the Nets, it seems like Mikal's off the table, but that might be smoke and mirrors. But in the fake NBA, he said it would have to be a sizable package, a few first, and a young talent. Okay, so those are, I haven't made an offer yet. I want to make sure I'm clear with you. I don't want to overstep. I've overstepped before in these mock drafts, and it's gotten us in trouble. We're going to talk later in the show about our history with these mock drafts. Sometimes my overstepping gets us in trouble.
Yeah, that's okay.
So I want to be careful here, but that is a range that the Hornets can hit because at the trade deadline, they acquired in the Terry Rozier to Miami deal, they have a first, and in the P.J. Washington to Dallas trade, they've got a first. Mm-hmm. So that's a possibility. Or if the Hornets did want to be or if we wanted to be in asset acquisition mode, we could look at one of the Nets' future first-round picks. The problem, Walker, is that the Nets don't have any of their own future first-round picks, thanks in part to the, Kyrie, Kevin Durant, James Harden, bleep fest. So they don't. But thanks to moving those players to Phoenix, they've got a couple of Phoenix first-round picks. They've also got a Philly first-round pick. So, but those are going to be late first-rounders. So those are kind of your options on the table. What do you think?
Okay. Mikal, Cam, both guys fit.
Cam who? Cam Newton?
Cam Johnson, sorry.
Cam Johnson, okay.
Cam Johnson. Okay, you were going with Mikal Bridges. I'll bring Cam Johnson into the fold. Okay. If they're going to eventually be out on Mikal Bridges in fake NBA world, Cam Johnson is another nice pivot point where you're not asking for all the first rounders as much as you would with Mikal. So both of those guys fit like a perfect puzzle piece with this squad. Defensive prowess, Mikal much more than Cam, but Cam not a minus defender. Cam Johnson good. Knockdown shooting, Cam has been shooting, what? Is he 40% on his career? It's something close to it.
Almost, like 39, I think.
Yeah, so knockdown. Plus, in the last episode, when we were talking about drafting some of these other shooters, and we've talked about it before, like they're tiny. If you can shoot well, then you're tiny in this draft. Not the case with Mikal, not the case with Cam Johnson, who sits like 6'8", 6'9" in shoes. He's a tall shooter, and now you're talking about a monster lineup, Doug. If Cam Johnson is inserted into the starting lineup, Grant Williams would become your smallest player, or your shortest, not smallest, but your shortest player at like 6'7", 6'8", and he's playing the power forward spot. Whew, buddy, lots of length all over the place with the idea that Mark Williams is healthy. Yeah, man, I think the Nets, it's absolutely worth exploring a trade for them. If we try to figure out what to do with Mikal, okay? So you give him number 6 in this year's draft. Then I do think that you're probably talking about trading the Mavs and the Heat pick, the 2 picks that you acquired anyway. I wonder if, does it matter?
You think it's going to take 3 firsts to get Cam Johnson?
No, I'm sorry. I'm saying Mikal.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mikal. Okay.
No, Mikal.
I was like, what are you? Oh, my God.
No, I'm talking Mikal. So if you go Mikal, sorry if I said Cam first. If you say Mikal,
I wasn't listening.
Then does it matter what first you're giving up? Like, would you rather get rid of yours or the teams, or like Dallas's and Miami's, because they are so far out? But the Hornets have not exactly had the best history, so it feels like you would want to keep on to yours. But if you're trading for Mikal, the idea is that you're going to be better, hopefully. So, yeah, I don't know. Does it matter to you what first-round picks you're getting rid of?
Do we start with 2? Do we see if we can get him to go 2? And then the salary, so Mikal makes around, I have this actually.
$24 million. It's a great contract.
$24 million a year. So that's Davis Bertans at 17 plus. He wants a young player. I mean, we can't do sign and trade with Bridges, do a Bridges for Bridges because we can make up whatever number we want. We just don't know what that number is going to be.
Right.
So we can't do that. So if we're talking young player, I think it's got to be Trey Mann. I think that's the best we can do young player wise. I mean, they could counter with Mark, and then we could say no, right?
That's exactly how that would go. They would counter with Mark, and then we would say no.
Here's how I actually think we negotiate this: is we say the 6th pick this year, because I think they really want to play in this draft.
Sure.
So we say 6th pick this year, and then the Miami pick, and Trey Mann and Davis Bertans, and they say no to that. If they counter with Mark Williams, we throw in the Mavs pick and see if we can just go 3 and those 2 players and go get Mikal. And now you're talking LaMelo, you're talking Brandon, you're talking Mikal, you're talking Grant Williams, you're talking Mark Williams. I mean, I think that gets you to the postseason. I really do. If you stay healthy, that gets you to the postseason. It's not going to get you 50 wins, but it gets you 45.
So, the 2027 Miami first-round pick, protected 1 through 14, and then I believe the protection is lifted off of that in the second year, if I'm not mistaken.
They're tasty picks. That's why I think we can get away with 2. I think we can get away with 2.
So, and then 2 on top of the 6th, right? Because you'd be trading 3, including the 6th overall selection. So it would be 3. It would be the 6th overall pick, and then it would be Mavs and Heat, unless you're just saying
if they count those. So what I'm saying, we start with 2. Because he in his text he said a few first. Okay, I don't know what your definition of a few.
It's
but I think
not 2, but okay.
We'll see. You got to listen. I don't know if you know how to negotiate, but you can't just throw everything. You got to have some room to go back and forth. So I say we go 2. We go Trey Mann. We go Davis Bertans. I have to run it through the trade machine to make sure that salary works.
Okay.
That should work. And then if he counters with Mark, then we go 3 picks. If he counters with the 3rd pick, or if he counters with like a future first of the Hornets, then we counter with that Mavs pick.
Okay. It's not bad. Okay, so you want to go after Mikal, or the other question is, before we move on, do we give up all that for Mikal, or do we just make it real simple and say, here's 6 overall, we want Cam Johnson, here's 6 salary filler, we want Cam, and I don't know. Is there anything else they're attaching to that?
I like that as a plan C. See, I think you and I are we're kind of, we see what the Cam Johnson deal ends up being, and if it's something we like, then I might make him propose the Cam. If the talks for Mikal Bridges fall apart, I might make him propose something for Cam Johnson. See if he wants to throw something on the table. Okay. Then we can say yes or no to that. And then if that all falls apart, then we just pick Castle. Because I like the idea of Cam Johnson, because then you're right, you are sizing up. You're replacing Miles Bridges with somebody that can actually shoot. And so that helps you with this idea of not being able to go 5 out with Mark Williams, at least not initially. So we've got I think we've got a lot of room to maneuver here. And I'll just say this. I'm going to put some text in, okay, with your permission, okay. Walker. I'm going to get this Mikal package together. And you're going to have to wait till Monday to find out what happens.
Okay. You have my permission. You put those texts in, and then maybe they get back to you, and then we can really start to dwindle this thing down. Coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
Don't go to sleep on the Hornets just yet.
I am titillated.
You are. Yes, you are. You are absolutely titillated. We'll try to weigh the options of trying to make a deal work with Brooklyn or taking the player at number 6. What's the better option? We'll discuss it coming up next. Before we make the pick, or at least try to figure out what we're going to do with that selection, this episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. LinkedIn Jobs, whether you're hiring for your small business or you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role, that's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just another job board. LinkedIn has a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals, which makes it the best place to hire. It gives you access to professionals you can't find anywhere else, and LinkedIn does all of that while making the process easy and intuitive. Hiring is easy when you have that many quality candidates. So easy, in fact, that 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. More Locked On Hornets ahead. Doug, I know you sent out some of the proposals. I know it's kind of real time here. So have you gotten anything back? And what are some of the updates that you can tell us?
I haven't got anything back yet. He has seen it. Adam Armbrecht from the Locked On Nets podcast has seen our offer. Now, I did have to change the offer slightly because I ran it through the trade machine and we were $1.5 million short of what we needed to be to make the money match.
Who'd you give
So I offered JT Thor.
Oh,
the
Les
more Thor
Thor
movement was sacrificed in this deal. It hurts my heart.
I'm sorry.
But if it makes the deal work, it makes the deal work. Now, it does present an interesting option, though, if we're talking about, dealing and counter offers that are going to happen here. Because, I offered Trey Mann because he wanted a young talent, and I think Trey Mann is that. The Hornets also have another young talent that they haven't fully utilized yet, and that's their late first-round pick that they made last season in Nick Smith Jr., who's due $2.5 million. And so there's, I don't know how you feel about that, but there's some counter proposal opportunity to sweeten this deal with a little NSJ.
If you're going after Mikal Bridges, to me, Nick Smith Jr. can't be the reason the trade doesn't get done. I'm okay with including Nick Smith Jr. If you are trying to hold on to every little asset that you can, which is smart business, Doug, nice job negotiating. But if it ultimately came down to NSJ or Mikal Bridges, then I'm okay. Like, you win, you strong-armed me, you can have Nick Smith Jr.
My only concern is that I may have lowballed a little too much.
That's what I was thinking.
Because, there's some names. Well, here's what I did. I tried to give him some context. I was like, hey, this Davis Bertans deal is restructurable. It's waivable. And I said, JT Thor is just to make the money work. And I gave him all of the pick protections on the Miami. I'm trying to give him as much information as possible. I almost sent him an episode of the podcast where we talked about Trey Mann.
Then figure it out yourself. Just watch it. Listen to it.
We're doing whatever we can, folks. Yeah, I'm worried that he's just going to come back so disgusted with Davis Bertans and JT Thor being involved in a trade for.
It's pretty gross.
Because he has to take this back to his podcast, right? I mean, he's got to be able to defend the deal like we've defended deals in the past when we've done deals in this mock draft, and we've done our fair share of deals in these mock drafts.
What do you think the perception would be if the Hornets traded a couple of first-round picks for Mikal Bridges, and the Hornets haven't even gotten out of the play-in yet? They won 20 games. Like, I think this move would be kind of ridiculed for Charlotte because they should be, quote-unquote, in asset collection mode. They should try to build towards the future a lot more so. And here they are trading for a win-now player and getting rid of some of those first-round picks. Essentially, if you think about it, you'd be trading, with some of the indirect ways to maneuver here, Terry Rozier, PJ Washington, Stephon Castle for Mikal Bridges.
Yeah, I think that Mikal Bridges is the exact kind of player that you spend this kind of capital on. In fact, I don't think they're going to have the opportunity because the Nets also feel that way. They want to see if they can make Mikal Bridges work, but we don't know about Locked On Nets. So, but I think this, because he fits so perfectly with what the Hornets need. They need durability. They need defense on the wing. He's going to make LaMelo. If you're building around LaMelo and you're building around Brandon, there's no better player to bring in than Mikal, who is not going to need to be the star of your team. He's actually going to complement perfectly, and his contract lines up with that. It's not like he's making $30+ million a year. His contract lines up perfectly with a third auxiliary piece to two-star players in Brandon Miller and LaMelo Ball. I think it gets them to a lower tier postseason berth next season, but then the potential for this team to build around that and get into the actual postseason and be a threat to win a series increases dramatically. I think I would buy into that idea if it were like almost any other player. I'm trying to think of an example of bringing in, I mean, Paul George is unrealistic, but if there were another, like going after James Harden or something, like to me, that wouldn't make any sense. If you're talking about a player on the back end of their career that used to be an all-star.
What about DeJounte Murray? What about like a DeJounte Murray? You help out defensively in the backcourt, but win now, you give up assets. Despite 2 point guards not working out in Atlanta, maybe it's different in LaMelo. Like to me, is that the example you're thinking of? Okay.
Another great example. I think that's sort of James Harden, Murray would be the two ends of the spectrum that you didn't want to hit. To me, Mikal Bridges is like right in the middle and like a perfect thing that they could add to, perfect skill set that they could add to this roster to make it sustainably win now.
Well, what's interesting about contracts is we view them as, do you get the bang for your buck based on how good you are as an NBA player? You're also, not only is the contract just a really good contract, you're also paying the price via assets if you're trying to trade for Mikal, for malleability. And that's what you're doing with Mikal because the fit has to work. But the thing about Mikal is it's not unique, Mikal's fit here to Charlotte. Everybody could use Mikal Bridges. Every single team in the NBA could use Mikal Bridges because he's a good three-point shooter. He's a great defender. He might be at the pinnacle talking about 3-and-D so much that he'll be a fringe all-star. The efficiency actually went down as he became a lead ball handler, but I expect that to go right back up to where it was when he was in Phoenix because you have ball handlers in Brandon Miller and LaMelo Ball. So yeah, that probably does call for 3 first-round picks. And then apparently reports are that the Nets have turned down that kind of package even more so before. They value the malleability. They value the type of player that he is.
I think that what Mikal Bridges would do in this acquisition, in a fake acquisition or a real acquisition, it would, for that subset of the fan base that really wants to keep Miles Bridges, it would blunt some of that impact of allowing him to go and make $25 or $28 million for Detroit because you're adding so much back with this kind of package. But look, to a certain extent, I understand folks that are saying, hey, this team has proven nothing. They're still developing LaMelo Ball. A lot of questions about his and Brandon Miller. A lot of questions about LaMelo's durability, about how, can he lead this team in a postseason? There's so many questions around this team. So, yeah, it would be a big risk and a longer-term contract that you're dealing with. But, I think, look, you got to make the risk at some. You've got to take the risk at some point. And so it's all a matter of how aggressive does this new front office and new ownership group want to be? Do they want to sit back and see what they have in LaMelo Ball and see what they have in Brandon Miller and see what they have in some of these trade pieces that they made? Or do they want to strike while the iron's hot? I want to strike. I want to do something. I'm impatient. I'm tired of watching playoffless basketball. I'm tired of this team not winning playoff series. I remember what that was like as a kid. I want to feel that again. And if Locked On Nets, if they'll let me feel that again, I will feel it.
You want to know what else is enticing about Mikal?
Why won't he reply? Reply. I see the little eyeball. I know he's seen it. Reply.
Mikal hasn't played anything less than 72 games in any of the seasons. Yeah, I know.
It's so good.
All right, final thing. Let's go ahead and maybe rapid fire Stephon Castle or trying our best to make this Mikal Bridges thing work, Doug. Like, what would you rather do? Or did you get a reply?
Well, I would rather Mikal. I mean, we've already made he could say yes to this right now and then deal's done. I can't, no, there are no take back scenes.
Oh, you can say take back. I was I'm playing.
Listen, there is a code. There is a Locked On podcast code, and you don't want to violate the code. No, listen, the deal is out there. And so if the deal is accepted, then the deal is accepted. And we have to accept that. But if it's not, I think if the counteroffer comes in and it's just absurd and I don't think that there's any room, we could try to pivot to Cam, or you and I could just put our heads together and say, forget Cam, let's just take Stephon Castle. That would make a lot. I think people listening to this right now, I think there's a loud group that are saying, what are you guys doing? Just take Castle. Like, what you're trying to Mikal and you're giving up a bunch of pieces, knocking out the chemistry. Like, a lot of people love Trey Mann. So, I think, we could pivot and just say, forget it, deal's off, we're going Stephon Castle. You have to wait until Monday to find out. Also, find out the history of the lot. We've been doing this, I'm not kidding, 2017. This goes all the way back to 2017. We have been picking in the Ultimate Mock Draft. And in fact, in the very first one of these, we made a massive trade back deal.
Yes, you did.
So, and that was David and I. That was before Walker came on the podcast. So on Monday, we should go down memory lane. I'm glad we didn't do it in this episode because I think it would influence negatively what people think about what we're doing now. But we should walk down memory lane in the next episode.
That's what we'll do then. We'll see. I'm excited, baby. I'm titillated myself. It's Locked On Hornets. Thanks for making us your first listen. We're free and available anywhere you get your pods. Make sure you check us out on YouTube and subscribe. It's been a while since I've said that. Just subscribe. What are you doing? Check out Doug's Substack as well, everyhornetsboxscore.com. Listen to me on WFNZ every weekday from 12 to 3 p.m. Have a great weekend. We'll be back with you on Monday to reveal our decision.
We're going to be back with something.
Titillated.